Hey, welcome to the Spiritual Awakening Annual YouTube Summit with me, Iona Mead at the SoulLegacyTV, Spiritual Business Success with Iona. And we have a great guest today. So I want to welcome Jude Hill to this episode. Welcome, Jude. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for inviting me.
You are welcome. So before we dive into this episode of the Spiritual Awakening Annual YouTube Summit, and Jude shares her spiritual awakening story, I just like to say the connection that I have with each of my guests and how I met them and why I brought them to you today. So just to put that into a little bit of context. So Jude and I have met a long time ago now. It's a few years now, right?
Yeah, a few years now.
Yeah. And so your story is similar to my story. So in the sense of our grief and what you now do. And so it really just, you've inspired me over the time that we have known each other, and you've come into the co-author program, my co-author program, and the journey that you've had in your own book writing process again has really inspired me. So I'd love for you to share what you do first, and who you do it for, and then take us back to the first spiritual awakening story that you knew was a spiritual awakening story, and just let's unfold from there. So what is it that you do? Why have I brought you to the Spiritual Awakening and you to Summit?
So I support bereaved parents to help rebuild their life after loss, because it seems like, you know, when it happens to you, as you know, it just completely knocks your world out of alignment. And yeah, you just, at that point, you just really can't see a way forward in those really early dark days. So that probably leads me on to my first spiritual awakening, when I didn't even realize at the time that it was a spiritual awakening.
That's it.
Was back just over 30 years ago now, when I lost my son Adam. He was only 4 to cancer, and I was only 24 at the time, so very young lady. World was a very different place back then, social media wise, and obviously all of what we're doing now just wasn't even heard of then, which is a bit crazy as well when you think back in the lifetimes how that's changed. But yeah, it was just how I pushed through, and what I realise now is his soul was guiding me at the time to do certain things. You know, one of the clear things was, which I know is something that a lot of other parents struggle with, is what do they do with their things? You know, people go from making a complete shrine, they won't touch anything in the child's room.
Oh, okay. So Jude has had probably a connection issue. And so I will take the framework off, and just wait and see Jude to come back in. We are streaming live, and sometimes technical issues and glitches do happen. And I know part of Jude's story, and again, you know, losing her son. We you know, we're mothers who have lost our sons, and it's not an easy journey. And I know that when I speak to other mothers, especially, you know, it's like that's the worst thing that could possibly happen. And I can tell you it is the worst thing that can happen for a mother. And Jude is here, and Jude stands for coming out of that sadness and having a little bit more sunshine in your life. Like you say, when you have those dark days, you don't really see a light at the end of that tunnel. And it is a very dark tunnel. And for some of us, you know, it's a short tunnel. And so for some of us, it's many, many years, as Jude said. You know, it's been, and she's had other losses as well, which hopefully if she comes back in, we'll be able to chat about that, other losses in terms of, well, I'll let Jude share, but losing as a parent, losing a child for Jude, she lost Adam through cancer. And so it was a journey for me, losing my son, Darnell. It was very sudden, and he was a lot older. And so we'd had more time together. Do you know what I mean? And a different time together. So everybody's experience is different. And like, as I say, Jude's writing her book. She'd already written her book. She's rewriting her book. And she's rewriting her book, and I'm supporting her in that, republishing, relaunching and republishing her book. So I'm really excited for that. And also Jude coming into the co-author book. So I've just been filling in a little bit, Jude, and I'll put the background in.
Sorry about that. Technology.
I've had it. Yeah, just that recap. And welcome. If you have any comments for Jude, and if you've experienced anything, you know, or you know of anyone, do add your energy to the conversation. I just want to say, Jude, before we dive back into the conversation, for those of you, this is streaming out on my YouTube channel, it's streaming out on the socials, and it's streaming out in the attendees Facebook group. So if you're in the attendees Facebook group, thank you for being there, and thank you for adding your energy. If you watch on the replay, again, watching live or watching on the replay, we do this live and we have the conversation so that you can add your energy to this conversation and talk about spiritual awakening. And when you go through any kind of grief, because Jude and I have gone through multiple losses, which I'm sure that we'll dive into, it can be very isolating. And you know, we can be behind closed doors, you know, really contemplating life. And so we're here to hold space for that. So Jude, we heard you say that, you know, Adam was 4 and losing Adam to cancer, and then and he was guiding you, and some of the dilemmas that we face as parents going through that is rebuilding life in a new way. And sometimes it is about actually making a decision. What does that look like? Okay, well, does it look like keeping my child's stuff? Or does it look like finding and rehoming? Or what are you going to do? And I had that. I was in the same place for 11 years, and Daniel passed 8 years ago. And so I gave up my home, right? I gave up my home, which meant all of these things that had been sitting there for years, and then I had to do something with, and it was really, really, really hard. So I didn't let everything go. So yeah, do continue on. Thank you.
Yeah, so I gave quite a lot of things, toys and some clothes and things to one of the cancer charities. Just at the mind in my head, I was thinking that might help someone else as well, sort of thing. And then just kept those few special bits, and I've got some of those later. And then I did later go on to have other children, 2 other boys after Adam, and they actually played with some of his toys and that. But it's always a split, bittersweet memories at the time, because you're happy in one sense that they're playing with it, but then it kills you in the other part where you think their big brother should be seeing them play, or he should be playing with them. So it always is a very bittersweet, I think, with a lot of things. And for many years I'd sort of forced myself through some of it, and now what I realize, it was a combination of my soul and Adam's soul guiding me to do certain things and building a connection. Obviously his brothers came on later, so when they were really little, I was still regularly visiting the graves. Obviously they knew about their brother. You mentioned multiple losses earlier, so I lost my dad about 18 months after I lost Adam to a sudden heart attack, totally out the blue. I was only 26 then. And then 18 months later, roughly, I lost my mum as well. So before I was 30, I'd had 3 of the biggest losses that you can have within that time. And, you know, some people say, you know, oh, how are you still standing or something? And I'm sure there was people that talked about me that didn't. Now I realise it was all that energy within me, but I didn't understand any of that at the time. Maybe it wasn't the right time in the world for it to be out there. And then we roll forward many years when I thought, as much as you ever do, I'd got through the grief, I'd done those hard years, and I'd sort of been back in the world, and you know, outwardly to everyone else I probably looked like I was living a normal life. And even to my husband, the other boy's dad at the time, who wasn't Adam's dad, you know, he probably thought I was okay, it was a normal relationship. But there I was at a workshop back in 2016 for my business as it was then, and got severely triggered. And then that was when the meltdown all came. And you know, people were like, oh yeah, it was a bit sad, that video that was just shared, but you know, they couldn't understand why I was just suddenly in streams of tears. And then obviously it came out there's nobody in the room knew my situation back at that time, 10, 15 years ago, that I'd lost a son. And the lady that was running it said, oh, maybe you should seek some help. And I was a bit sort of, at that time, I was like, no, it's going to go back in the box, sort of sit on the top. I don't want none of this, you know, counselling. What, again, at the time, that's what I thought then. I thought, what can talking about it to someone do? You know, it can't do the one thing that we all want, especially losing a child when it's that sort of grief, is you just want them back. You know, you'd swap places. It's something I've always said, that if it was possible, I would swap places. The only thing that would kill me now is the effect it would have on my other children, because obviously I know how deeply it is when you grieve someone close to you. But yeah, it was, you would just do that in a heartbeat if that was possible. But and then rolling on from there, I went to another workshop later that year, and then that was when I discovered the energy healing, and then that was my real big spiritual awakening, where I can now look back, and after all the things I've done since then, trading other modalities to help, so I've got a whole sort of toolbox of things that I can use now to help people through it. And I really do think that is key to the energetics. So, you know, you get people like me that just push through it, get on with the day-to-day things, force themselves to do that, but you're not really living deep in here, even though outwardly you think, oh, I've got a happy life again, sort of thing. You know, I was married at one point with 2 other children, and, you know, life was visibly okay, what people would see. But, you know, there's that deep dark, and if you don't heal that deep dark in your heart, then that's when you go, and then you get other people that crumble, and then they may be on medication for years or something like that and can't see a way out of it. But all that does is numb you, whereas releasing it energetically through your body, it is just amazing of what you can release, and you can just feel so much lighter, and you can, as my tagline says, see the sunshine at the end of it. So that's what I want to take people from the sadness of their loss to the sunshine of life afterwards. And then a big thing of that is also adding in the connection with their loved one and building that. And, you know, my older sons now do talk about their brother, but they never physically met. So if they could build that connection just from what I've shared with them and the energetics, you know, they've got a half-blood connection, and they've got a strong connection, then we can certainly still hold that connection on. And I think a lot of people think if they let go of the sadness they feel is what connects them to the, you know, whoever it is, their child or the person that they've lost. But it doesn't. You can let go of that sadness, and then you can build on the connection much, much stronger.
Wow, that's incredible. Thank you. That was a lot for me to unpack, and I've heard a lot of your story, and I think I've heard some more pieces today. So thank you so much for sharing, because, you know, even to be here sharing the way that you has taken healing, right? A lot of healing to be able to speak about and honor not only Adam, but actually, you know, speaking about, you know, you said your boy is playing with his toys, and I get that, because for those who don't know, I was fostering, right? And one of the foster children has my son's name as his middle name, and they were playing with his toys, and they were playing with, do you know what I mean? And it's like, wow, it's just, you want them to have fun, but it's still, you've still got that tie in, that memory. And while somebody's going off and playing and having fun, and you've got all of these mixed emotions, and as you say, you know, you can have that joy, and it is bittersweet, but then connecting again to that sadness and making it just leaning more to the sad than to actually, that's a really good thing. You know, they get that connection, and they get that joy. You said a lot, obviously, for the short time and under 30, that those 3 losses is absolutely huge. And I've had multiple losses, and that's where our connection as well, for my dad and my brother and excuse me, the sudden, you talked about, and just kind of just connecting to your journey and where you've been and how you've gone. One of the big things I think for me hearing your story, Jude, is that maybe you thought that you were okay, But you said that other people thought, including your husband, thought that you were okay. And it's kind of that pushing through, and this, whatever that is, like that external, oh, well, I'm actually living life. I've rebuilt my life externally, but internally there's a mismatch. And then you're saying that, you know, there's a trigger in that crumbling, and maybe we don't even understand what it is, but other people are like, well, I've just seen the same thing that you've seen, and I haven't had the same reaction that you've had. So, and then I love that you got support, and somebody said, you know, maybe you do need some help, but you're like, well, actually, what kind of help can I have? We didn't even know what was out there. Like you said, you know, good few times, the way that the online space and the availability of resources and tools and people like you now is huge. Back then it wasn't. So I'd imagine that now you do what you do because there wasn't so much out there for you. So thank you for even, you know, doing that. And as you said, where you've rebuilt the second time around, when you've gone to the second workshop and learned about the energy healing, it's like, actually, I've come all of these years physically, but actually that energetically and that heart, that healing still needed to be done. So that's really interesting. Yeah, you can survive. Yeah, you can build a life and be happy to a certain extent, but when we ignore it or bury it, I think that's probably it, that burying or that numbing, as you say. You talked a little bit about some of the tools that you used. Can you share a little bit about like how those tools came, like what tools you used to go through that spiritual ascension? So you've gone through the grief, multiple layers of grief, and it's re-triggered. What came to you first? What tools came to you that really helped you? What did you do? Like, what was the point where, going from, actually, what is it going to do? Talking about it, I'm going to be fine, put it in the box, to where were you emotionally, like in your life situation, for you to say, now is the time? For anybody watching, and do share this out because somebody may see that. What point, what was the trigger to then say, actually, I'm going to make a decision to open that box again?
So it was actually the energetics. So the weekend I was on, it was sort of like a business program weekend, building your program for the business I was currently doing at the time. And then, but on an energy healing basis as well, they look at it from the energetics, because everything, even back to what Einstein says, everything is energy, and it is within the world. And we're just learning so much more about that these days. And, you know, you've got anything from the quantum physicists, from the way they see it, it's much more different and come into the world then. So it was looking at that energy alignment. So it's aligning your body. Like a lot of people, when they'll go through grief, they'll obviously naturally, you've got that dis-ease in your body. So for some people, it would take a physical turn. So they'll be physically affected, and they'll come up with things. I mean, fibromyalgia is quite a common one. Other people say will link to that sadness, and then they'll go on the depression phase. Or you'll get people like me that physically push forward and outwardly look okay, but emotionally it's buried deep within, because they've really pushed through it and been through so much, you know, over those years. But it's that emotional sadness that they're holding on to. And when
thank you. So how were you, what was it like for you emotionally? Walk us through like what those days were like after that workshop, like, or before that workshop, between the first experience when you were in floods of tears. Did you just push back through, or how did it resurface for you?
Yeah, I pushed back on. So the first workshop was in April, and then the second one was in November. So I didn't expect it to come up at this second workshop. I can't even think what started the trigger then, but it's one of the exercises we were doing. And obviously with the energy of it, it just brought it all out. And then the story all came out. So again, at that point, I was still in tears around the table then, telling people what's happened. Then we did the energy healing on it. There was a few different practices that went on to energetically release that sadness out of your body, which was quite a new thing to me at the time there. I'm quite right-brained in that sense. I've always been sort of intrigued by other things, but not deeply into anything before. But yeah, it was just that release of that. And then by the time at the end of the dinner table that evening, I was then with most people, I knew a couple of people on the course, but the others were relative strangers, being able to talk without being in tears about Adam. And, you know, whereas I'd buried it for many years, you know, it's one of those questions, I'm sure you fall into that, you know, you're just randomly somewhere and people say, oh, how many kids have you got? You know, a new lady started at work the other week and, you know, she asked me, oh, you got how many boys you got, sort of thing. And, you know, it's just one of those common questions, and you can choose how you feel to answer it for the circumstances there. But yeah, for many years, I'd just say 2, and it wasn't like, but it was, that was a factual thing more than anything. You know, I fully well knew that I wasn't discounting Adam and that, but it's just not going into that. You know, when it came up at the first workshop, people were all a bit like, oh, I thought you just did, but you just don't, you know, it's that other way of when you go out, how can you cut into it and say, you know, and some people do, and
I do.
That's it. But it's always been how I deal with it. I always think about how the other person's going to receive it. When he was poorly at one point, he had a bandage wrapped around his head after he'd had surgery because it was a brain tumour. That was the type of cancer he had. And I'd be pushing along at the high street and someone would sort of relatively innocently go, oh, has he bumped his head or something? So I'd normally go, yeah, and sort of carry on pushing just because I knew it was sort of easier for them or something like that, you know. And then occasionally, if they caught me on a bad day, I'd go, no, he's had a brain tumour. And then you just leave the energy, which I didn't realise at the time, drained from them when they think, oh, foot in mouth, what have I got to say? And then they don't know, you know, what to say. So energy comes in so many words, just from the words that you choose to say to people as well. You know, so there's a whole expansion thing. Yeah, I haven't got long enough to talk about it all.
I get that. Thank you for sharing, and I've shared this with you privately as we've worked together and we've had our conversations. And you know, the first time that somebody was quite early on, somebody had come to fix the boiler and asked me, and I was like, I've got to say that, and I like gave the whole premise, I've got to say this because. And they said, no, it's fine. And you have to go through this whole story rather than just this answer. And you brace yourself for being able to. And I think when you're saying that, you having to, as a mother or a parent, losing your child, then you thinking about other people's feelings. And I'm sure that there are many of us who do that. Like I still think of their feelings, but it's like, well, even that is honoring our child in our mind or honoring our child outspoken. Either way, we're still honoring. And it's just, it can take you to the depths. So yesterday I had said that I was off taking my great nephew to the opticians, the one that's got my son's middle name. So I said, the lady said, oh, this is what you would have avoided. So he said, I said, tell her your name. So he told her his name. And then she said, you know, what's your last name? So he told her. And she said, oh, have you got any middle names? So he said, yes, this is, my name is Darnell. And this is my Auntie Noni. His speech is a bit like, this is my Auntie Noni, and Daniel was her son, and Daniel died, and so blah, 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 blah. And just in the middle of the opticians, and everybody was like, she couldn't understand him fully. She thought he said something about Santa.
Yeah.
So I had to say very slowly, no, I am his Auntie Noni, and his middle name, and I had to then repeat in the middle of this sharp, and then by this time we've got a queue behind us, and then he's announcing, and so children just really don't. You know what I mean? And I did explain to him, I said, you know, some people, you know, would get upset and blah, blah, blah. But so it is, and I had to just laugh and smile and laugh it off, and you know, and I can talk about Darnell, and I did see he's a child, and he's proud that he's got my son's name, and he said he died, and he died on the road, and he said, but why didn't he look? And he's just all the things, and I think, wow. So it is a big, you know, it's 8 years on, and for you, it's, you know, over 30 years on, and it still is one of the biggest things, I think, as a parent, as a mama, to just, what do you do with that? What do you do with that? So I do understand why it's easier not to say sometimes. And either way, whichever way you choose, you know, if you've ever had that loss, it's okay. But you know, it's a hard one. I mean, when people say about your parents, it's like even that, just explaining. In a way, I think us having more conversations normalizes grief, and that it does happen, and it's okay to speak about it. And like you said, now you're able to talk about Adam.
Well, I know I've found from the people I've worked with and that as well, or even, you know, in the groups that are on line and things, one of the things they say is that people, again, sort of tend to go either way with things like that, or some will want to talk about their child all the time. And then I know one of the things they often complain about is other people around them feel uncomfortable them talking about their child. They, you know, they say, oh, they're dead, why are you talking about them? But that's why, if you're building that inner strength and you're getting your inner alignment and you're connecting with your heart and doing whichever way is right for you from your heart, then you've got that power to hold it and to be able to do what you want to do and go either way. I know one of the times with me, my eldest son's got Asperger's, so he's quite black and white about certain things, and I hadn't realised the bigger impact I'd had till once I was picking him up from his first part-time job when he was 16, 17 outside Tesco's, and I can't remember how we got onto the conversation, something about it, and he just said, oh yeah, I'm always talking about Adam at work. And that was the bit that hit me, because although they'd always done the visits to the grave, and at home we, you know, not all the time, but we had a lot of time. I hadn't realised even till that was one of the big points for me, that I'd made that much of a connection, that he then spoke about his brother that he'd never even met because he come along a few years later. Outwardly in public like that, in a general situation, just because it had been normalised. Because I know how I dealt with it when they were little. I hid my pain from them. I had that separate, and it was like, oh, we're going to go and visit your brother and your nan and your granddad, and they're here, and that sort of thing. So I'd always made it not necessarily a jolly, but not a sad time when I was there. You know, it was just something we did. And you know, just like you said from your nephew, kids are amazing, because they you know, we've all got it when we're born into this world, that's the thing. And then mostly with the outside conditioning and what we're supposed to think, and you know what you say, and that you sort of get it beaten out of you, that natural energetic. So you that's what you need to bring yourself back to, that how the children see it. It just is what it is. And you know, they pick up that connection. And you know, if your strength for how you were and how you've carried it with them is how he can just say something like that, you know, and it is totally normal, for want of a better word, but people don't always see it like that. It's that thing of, we're so uncomfortable talking about loss. We do that, oh, I'm sorry for your loss thing, and everyone's around in those early days. And then later on, I know when I started a job a few years ago to fill in, and someone said, oh yeah, someone that had left had lost their child, and someone made some comment about why they were still talking about it 2 years on, and you just think, can you really imagine? Like, obviously I didn't know my history and that, but so people do just make those comments like that as well.
That impatience and that dismissive, and then when you turn it around to someone, it's like, if you lost your child, goodness forbid, would you want to talk about them? Well, oh gosh, I couldn't even imagine. So then, therefore, do you know what I mean? And I love that, you know, you're on the journey to bring more bereaved parents to live that life after loss, and then to normalize that, and to have conversations if we want to have conversations, and to have a space where other people, and again, I know from, because I joined, I don't know if we ever connected through that, maybe, I'm not sure how we connected online.
The universe brought us together. Simple
Yeah, exactly, right. Yeah, exactly, that divine connection. Because I was in groups at one point. We're launching this Soul Legacy Academy. I'm like, I want to reach and work with people who do want to honor, you know, somebody that they've lost, who do want to leave that legacy and understand that actually these moments that we got on this earthly plane, not to take them for granted, basically. But sometimes in those communities, I've come out of them now. It would be when you go in them, you get the life sucked out of you and you spiral down and feel worse than what you went in. And I wanted to be, and I'm sure, I think a little bit like you, I know your stories. I won't put words in your mouth. But for me, I was like, I want to honor my son. I want to speak about him, but I don't want to leave in tears. I mean, I do cry. I cry online. You've seen me cry, you know. It's different. It's that sadness, as you said, that connection to that I'm sharing from this, and that's okay. That's okay. And however long that takes, you know, that's okay. But like you said, to teach how to still have that deep connection, but connect it from a place of light and a place of that sunshine, it feels very, very different, because our children would not want us to be so sad all of the time. Not at all, you know. And you connecting and you helping us forward with that journey, what does that look like? Like, I know that you're rewriting your book. I was talking about that when the connection had gone. Can you share with us what would we expect, like the tools and things that you would have in your book? And will you be giving a free chapter away to our spiritual alchemy giveaway? Hopefully you will. I'd love that. Put you on the spot.
Yeah, of course.
But yeah, what is in there? What kind of journey can you take us on?
So first of all, just like to, what's the bit I was going to say now? It's gone straight out of my head. That was it. So yeah, so after I had that second workshop where it all came out, and it was suggested by the lady that was running it that maybe I should switch from doing social media to help bereaved parents, and I was like, no, little old me, I'm only little old Jude. I just got on with things and did that in the day, and obviously I've done so much more since then, so now I feel ready to go in it. But one of the things was when I came and I looked on Facebook, because obviously social media wasn't around when I lost Adam, so there wasn't that searching and joining those groups. And you know, I've heard it from a lot of people that have come across to mine, or people I've met. There was one other lady that also wrote a book that had lost her son, and she said the same as you. She just felt worse quite often after spending time in those groups that were supposed to help. And yeah, it's not about, you know, a lot of people talk about spiritual bypassing in general, so it's not ignoring the sadness, but it's actually dealing with it, bringing up whatever emotions are coming up for you and releasing them, and then that's where you can come through the other side and you can find that true sadness and that deeper connection with the one that you've lost. So yeah, that was the thing there. And I sort of looked at those groups and I thought, oh my God, if I'd have been reading some of this stuff when I was down in my depths. Again, one of the spiritual awakening moments I remember at the time was, I'm 24. I was in such pain that unless, like you've also been through it, you can't imagine if you've not lost a child, that I couldn't see a way of ever not being in that unbearable pain. But equally, I was thinking, I've got another, 40, 50 years on this earth, probably. I couldn't live with that pain for that. So it was sort of, that was one of my defining moments back then that made me think I've got to push myself through. And again, I'd known now it was my soul and Adam's energy that was getting me through that point. But so that you can come through and out of there. So yes, it's got to be talked about, the low end stuff, but it's so it can then be released and transformed. And I think that's what's very different with the work that I do with doing it in that energetic way. A lot of things, all of the other things, they don't really transform it into anything. It's just like the stuck energies go around continually on that loop, talking about all the bad things, the traditional counselling where you're just going to talk about things. And you know, I've had a lot of clients and people that I'm connected to that have said they felt worse after counselling because it dragged all of it up again.
And it goes nowhere.
Just left them then trying to hold it, feeling like they've got a heavier weight on them. Whereas when you do the energy releasing, then that lightens it, and then you've got the inner strength to come through. You actually find that inner power and your inner sovereignty that, as we were saying earlier, you're born with you know, the kids and the way they say things. So yes, as part of my book, I talk about that, explain the energetics more. I've got a 7-day system that relates to the chakras as well. So things like the root energy is that initial stability thing is the main thing with that. And of course, stability gets knocked out of you when you lose something like that. It's just not the standard thing to lose your child. If you know you're older, it's very sad when, you know, grandparents die, but everyone's going to get to that age, you know. It's a certainty in this thing, life and death and taxes, they say, are the three certainties. So it's going to happen, but you're not expecting it that way round. So that's why it does completely knock some people for 6, and then they're on the floor and they really just can't find a way of getting up off of that floor. So you know, that's part of what I deal with. But yeah, it's the energetics of letting that. And I look at it on my 4C system. So the care, it's your physical care. So that might be where you start, because again, if you're in the early stages of grieving, you know, you need help physically doing things. You haven't got the energy, you know, maybe some people are going to cook some pre-cooked meals and bring them around for you.
I ate one meal a day because my partner at the time told me I had to. And I said, I don't feel like eating. And it's like, if you eat, you just need to make sure you have one. And that's for a full year. And I don't remember cooking any. I don't.
People don't realise how hard simple things, you know, even just getting out of bed in the morning if you haven't got other children to get out of bed. So, you know, that was me. I went back to work after a few months, and that was just because I knew otherwise it would be so relatively easy to stay in that sense and just stay in bed and not move anywhere. Whereas I had my own flat that it was just me. I was a single mum to Adam. And so if I didn't go back to work, the mortgage wouldn't get paid, and then I wouldn't have anywhere to live. And that was important to me to maintain the home at the time. So that was my driving force. But I think that did me good. Don't get me wrong, it was hard at work, and through a friend I'd got them to tell everyone, nobody in the office is to ask me anything, because as soon as someone said, "Oh, how are you doing, Jude?" I would have just been instantly in floods of tears at that point. You know, I wasn't Superwoman or anything, so people were told not to speak to me about that. And then I just managed to, by putting that mask on, like many of us put on, get through the day. And but it was that going through the motions. You know, you're dead inside. You seem like you're getting out there and doing things, you know. And a lot of fathers do that because they feel they've got to get back out to work and they've got to support the mother. And then that's where things that have dealt with, sometimes you get a lot of relationship issues as well, because you know, they can grieve very differently. The mothers feel sometimes that they can't cope. They, you know, the fathers will do that, going back to work and doing the man thing again, you know, the conditioning again, the social conditioning of what they should do, and holding up and looking after you. And then you're not getting that emotional thing. So physically is the first thing, the care. Then emotionally and mentally, because obviously it's a whole big mind issue with what happened, blaming yourself, all of that things, all of the linked emotions, like the, you know, you're not just got the grief and the sadness, you got the guilt. You know, should I have done this? Should I have done that? I think whatever the circumstances and the many different deaths of the people I've worked with, there's guilt there somewhere. And you know, you all did what was best at the time and in your heart, and that was the way it played out. So, you know, some of the things that I offer as part of my membership is things like meditations to start off with, just simple ones. So to work on a lot of those common emotional issues, the releasing the grief. So if you can't, or you're not ready to deal with the bigger energy work, or not at that point of working one-to-one, it's just a gentle way of doing it. Something you can play. You know, if you're having trouble sleeping, then it's a good thing to listen to when you're going to bed, because it might help you get off to sleep. And even if you fall asleep to those healing type meditations, then the healing's actually energetically carrying on even though you're not
Anyway.
your subconscious is still aware of what's going on. So that's a big thing. So yeah, that's why I'm in the middle of rewriting the book, to add in all the things that I've done since
I'm excited
the first
about
edition.
it.
And also bringing in a few more bits of the stories, a couple of the little bits I've mentioned today of, you know, those moments now where realizing, looking back, I thought, oh yeah, that was a spiritual awakening then, but I didn't realize. So it's bringing it all
the spiritual
together.
awakening story is huge, and that's what I stand for. That's why I'm, you know, having you share and then connecting those dots, because when we go through that spiritual awakening, it's like it's happening to me rather than for me, and it's happening for us so that we heal and we can turn around and support others on their healing journey, on their path as well, and alchemize. So you're talking about some of the tools to take you through that spiritual ascension. So how many C's have you shared? You've got 4 C's. So you've said the care.
So care, which is comes under the physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual, soulful element. The soulful connection is really important as well. And then the other 2 are communication and connection. So connections about the way you connect and deal with connections with the people you're still with. Obviously, the very important one of still building that connection with the person you've lost, be it a child or someone else that you've lost there. And communication is a big one as well, which is what often causes a lot of problems in any relationships, really, not just ones where there's a loss issue, but you haven't got the strength to communicate how you feel, or you think you're communicating it, but it's coming from a different energy perspective because you're down there. If you deal with how you're feeling, like say you're annoyed because family don't realise that you don't want to go to the barbecue because you're triggered by the fact that nephews and nieces are there, and you can't cope with it because your son or daughter isn't there and shouldn't be. They should be playing with them. Then that's the thing. We'll work on you first, because you can't change how other people are to you, even energetically. There's not some magic potion you can do to that, but choose how you feel about it. Get any of your resistance and there, and then you can have a clear and connected conversation with them and say, look, I'm not able to come to the barbecue because I still feel like this at the moment because of that. But you can say it from a more firm, strong standpoint. Or sometimes maybe once you've done the releasing, you will be able to go and enjoy and see parts of your son or daughter in maybe your nephew and nieces or whoever's there, and think, oh, just how they're doing it. That's just how Jessica would have been, or something like that, you know. And you just see it from a totally different perspective. So that's about it. You can go back out and really get out there in the real world again and the real life, and
build your life
the whole aspect of it.
That loss. And so you talk about that, it's like, well, okay, well, these are some of the tools and some of the processes that you will be able to build that life after loss, and it's huge. And there's a big life after loss community, and I just love your essence and your message and the way that you do bring that, because that is what I stand for as well. I just think my son's life meant more to me. You know, some people celebrate the occasions, the holidays and stuff. For me, I'm like, I just say I don't celebrate Christmas. I've tried and I've done, and I did last year for the kids because I had 3 children with me. Why would you not? Of course you would. You put them, but as a rule, I'm like, I just it hurts. It's a lot, you know. And my daughter gets it. It's a lot. It's a lot for her as well. And you know, family, some say, well, you've got to do, people used to say, you've got to do. Do not tell me what I do and do not have to do. You do not walk in my shoes. And every day I get up and I smile and I live my life, and I do, and I live my life very intentionally. And I said, for me, Christmas wasn't that. I'm not religious. I'm spiritual. It was about that family gathering and that family connection. And my daughter and I have that every single day anyway. Do you know what I mean? So that it's painful for me. And I've given myself permission. If I don't want to do it and I don't want to put up the Christmas tree, I don't want to put up the Christmas tree, you know, and I'm okay with it, you know, and people are not always. And I have said things in, like, defensively, or have said things like, well, what, you know, now people kind of, you know, my niece, I'm at my niece's, and she's like, well, Auntie Iona, you know, what do you want to do? And I don't want to not say, and would you like me to get you a present? And would you? And they all know I'm like, yeah, I'm not gonna do what it's for me. It was always a commercial thing anyway, and me and my children would just have meaningful. And we had an early Christmas, just because my daughter had wished for an early Christmas when I was going through a breakup with my ex-husband. And so we did that. We had our own traditions. So, you know, for someone who, you know, has had that loss, whether it's loss of a child, just that bereavement, and they're going through the, you know, that lack of that communication. Do you have a space for people to come to you and in your world to have that level of community where, you know, we get it, you know, we get it, whichever way you want. I mean, some people might just go over the top with it and just go, well, they would have wanted me to do. It's just being at peace, you know. So is there a space for your audience, your readers?
Yeah, I can add in the links later. So I'm just basically redefining how I go. I'm just going to be in January launching.
Oh, we've gone again. Excuse me. So Jude, I'm guessing, will be back again, and again we're live. Sometimes we're actually both in the UK. Sometimes the connection goes, and you know, I've loved this conversation. Hopefully you've loved this conversation so far. Thank you, Jude. And,
I'm obviously way too high energy today, as it keeps.
Yeah, when you just bounce it out. That's what happens sometimes, isn't it? So you're saying that you're revamping, we're working on your rewriting your book and doing that work, and creating that space where people can move forward and come to you, so we can hold space, because I'll definitely be part of that community, because it is me as well, and I'm involved with a charity and things or getting more involved with a charity for bereaved and parents as well. And I think, yes, the charities, that's great, but the actual healing, because it isn't that, it's there. I don't know that many spaces and that are creating the message and the energy and the environment that that you want to create. I think it's really important to acknowledge those of us who are on the journey that want to actually live in that light more than we live in that darkness, and honor our children in that way. And it's not making us right and other people wrong. It's just, this is our choice to do that. And I think sometimes when you do want to go down that path, then you do want to have a life. I want to have a life. Do you know what I mean? I want to have a life. I want to have a very full life. It's not because I'm so happy that, you know, I'd be a lot happier if my son was just here. But when I'm in that space and I have that resistance to accepting what is, it takes me down. It's so much more painful not accepting and resisting than accepting and building my life after loss. This is me building my life after loss.
They would want it for us. That's my fourth C. It's creating. So it's creating your new future and new life. The phrase that's often bandied about is the new normal, and it is to a degree, because life is never going to be the same, and that's where a lot of people struggle. They look back, and you know, from that day, I know with Adam, you know, some of the milestones, especially when the other boys come along, and it was totally in my face sort of thing. You know, their first day at school, I lost him at 4, so he didn't get to have his first day at school. You know, he didn't get so many firsts to do with school, and going up to secondary school, you know, doing that, all the rest of it sort of thing. There was so much, but you can't hold, if you live in that past, you're living in the past, you're dead yourself. You know, I know a lot of people feel like they want to be, but you may as well be at that point. You're here. And as one of my spiritual mentors says now, it's a lot easier to actually leave this world than we realize. So if you are still physically here, even if you don't realize it, your soul is choosing to be here. You know, it's a lot of things that people will say, which if you're not that way inclined, it's a hard pill to swallow at the time, that your soul chose to go through that, to experience this. And, you know, a lot of people talk about traditionally like learning these lessons, but yeah, when you actually come out the other side, it can be happy and joyful. And that was the thing at that the second workshop, where it all came out, and it was suggested like, oh, maybe Jude, you're the person to have these bereaved parents. And I was like, what, little old me? I don't know anything about that. I'm nothing special, sort of thing, and went into my shell like that. But yeah, it's about bringing that out of everyone and letting their light shine in the world. And so many, that's what our children would want for us. They, you know, they wouldn't want to see us crying every day and in that down mode, you know. And just because you're not, it doesn't make your love any less as well.
Or your grief any less. And that is
more,
that,
you know, you talked about Christmas earlier, and everyone finds their own way. So my way, I used to go to the grave Christmas Eve, do the bits there, leave a present for him or a decoration for his graveside and things, and do that then. And then I, at the time, because I didn't have the way of energetically switching it off, I mentally constructed it and switched it off as much as I could, so I could throw myself into Christmas for them, because obviously from babies onwards to toddlers, and I thought, well, they've got to experience the happy family Christmas and that, you know, kidding me sometimes, thinking their big brother should be there with them, opening his toys, watching them open their, helping them play with that, because obviously he's that little bit older, but you can't live in too much of that world. So it was splitting those two and just not letting that sadness take over. And but now that's what I want to help parents with, so they've got that way of releasing that side of things. They can go and do whichever tool they find is most useful to them to release that, and then they've got that strength to go to the family gathering if that's what they're choosing to do, or have their own little family Christmas with their remaining children at home. And but it's not from a push energy of putting their attention into the other children. It's from a whole, and you know, bringing the child that they've lost along as part of the family. You know, I always used to talk about Adam, and you know, they've grown up with it being standard sort of thing of going along to the graveside. So and as we said earlier, you know, the little ones do just take that on stride, but it wasn't really till that point, sort of 16, 17 years later, when Nathan made that comment about talking to him at work, and I realised how big an impact it had been over those years. And, you know, that was before I had the awareness I have now. So that's what I want to help people learn, bring out that awareness in them, so that, you know, they can have that fully expansive life while they're here with the people that they're still with them, but also they can build that connection and have that expansive life with the one that they've lost as well.
Having that balance, it's amazing, and it's a juggle, and I'm not an expert at it. I just like the journey that I've been through. Is it's not for the faint-hearted. And you've said, you know, souls choosing to have that experience, and I laugh because there's the founder of the Soul Legacy Academy, and having these conversations. And I had this conversation yesterday with our next guest, actually, for today. And you know, I said, in my humanness, I'm like, well, I don't get it, and I would rather not. And who would agree to that? And in my I know it's like, okay, well, I have that knowing that, well, that was a contract. I don't remember making it, obviously, but if we believe that way, and we can't then believe in spirituality for a hot minute and then not believe, and then retract it, and then say it. So it's like, well, if you do believe that, just because it's happened to you, and it's not somebody, when you look at somebody else, you'd give them that advice, but when it comes to us, it's like, well, that can't be. Well, you'd say it for somebody else, so actually embody that for yourself. And it's true for me anyway. That's my truth as well, and that's what keeps me going. Launching, leading, and leaving our soul legacy, and doing that with ease, grace, and flow feels like that sunshine. It feels like moving from that sadness, I call it that funk, soul funk, to that soul flow. And that's my job every single day. How do I do that? How do I live into that? And sometimes it is saying no to certain things, and sometimes it is saying yes to a lot of things. And I the majority of the things I say yes to. And some things I'm like, yeah, that's just a hard no for me. It's just a hard no. And it's okay either way, whatever it is. Like you said, that healing, and then you make that choice. Is this a yes for me, or is this a no for me? Why is it a yes for me? Why is it a no for me? Am I living in alignment with my values? What's important? Yes, no. And then just taking action from there. I mean, like you say, I could talk to you all day long. With that, I want to respect your time and your internet connection. So we've talked about your awakenings. Thank you. We've talked about some of the tools that you use for your spiritual ascension and that alchemizing it. And we've talked about what you do and how you do it in your business. And that's why I've brought the summit again, because it's normalizing, actually, like you said, our souls having that human experience, what we've agreed to come. And like you've said it a couple of times, what, little me? Like, who am I to do that? But who are you not to? And the nuggets, I think when you listen back to this, the nuggets and the journey of what you've been through, and the things that other people may take for granted, the things that we might have taken for granted, like the going to work, like the cleaning, like the Christmas, like the looking after, like having other children, like all those things, when you're in that darker space, feel like a mountain to climb. So the fact that you've done it is not little Jude, it's wow, because there are so many of us that are not there yet. So many of us parents are not there yet. So Jude, I want to wrap up, and I want to say thank you for sharing your spiritual awakening story. I will ask you if you've got anything to add at the end and where can people find you. But for me, for the way that this spiritual awakening and your YouTube summit has come to me is to have a conversation with each of my guests. And you'll watch this, you can watch it on the replay. It's streamed out. It's on my YouTube channel, the SoulLegacyTV, Spiritual Business Success with Iona. And we have the spiritual ascension after show. So I would love for you, it's on the third Thursday of the month. So we have 6 shows, 6 of these episodes a month on the 2 middle binge watch Wednesdays, I call them, 9 a.m., 3 p.m. and 9 p.m. UK time. So I've got another 2 shows today. Watch out, they'll be in a playlist for you to just go through them and just, really absorb the messages and the nuggets, because each of my guests are really just bearing all of the process that sometimes they've probably never even shared, and they're sharing it for you to help you so that you feel like you're not alone, whether it's grief through a child, whether it's loss through whatever that is, whatever spiritual awakening. For me, I feel like spiritual awakening is so rude, and I searched on YouTube for other people that have gone through a spiritual awakening, and I listened to so many stories, and I'm just like, I wanted to create a space and a community around that. So do please share this out if you know that anyone else could benefit. Share the series out. Join us. We have the Spiritual Alchemy giveaway, which each of my guests will be contributing a gift for you to help you with your spiritual ascension. It's really important to me, and I'm committed to doing this. And I've scheduled it out for 7 years to just watch the light be birthed in the world from those dark times, and that, sadness in general. A spiritual awakening brings up a lot of sadness, and there's a lot of healing to be done. And I love the vision of just being a beacon of light in the world. So with that, Jude, thank you again for being on the Spiritual Awakening and the YouTube Summit and podcast. Have you got anything that you would like our audience to just really take away as like a wrap up for the day, like that one thing? And where can people find you? And we'll leave links and bios and everything in the show.
Yeah, I can add that in. My main website is sadnesstosunshine.com. So you'll find details on there, a little bit under construction at the moment for the
we're working together for those of you who don't know.
The right people and more people out there. But come and find me there. There's ways to connect. There is on there, you can get a free download of the original book that I'm currently in the moment of rewriting and adding to with as my journey's progressed, as it ever does. But I think that's the key thing, just the sadness. And that's what I would just say generally about loss, letting go of that sadness. That is the thing I find most is the key to being able to move forward, but still keep that connection or build on the connection, so the soul connection's even stronger. You know, what I always say is, like, I feel Adam is in my heart forever, and our soul bond can't be broken. Whatever happens, we'll be reunited as souls when it is my time. And you know, some people wish for that sooner, but yeah, you can have that connection here. You know, that was one of the things that happened after I had them experience and I started working with the energy. I can just sit in the quiet, and then I can just feel him with me. So just feel his energy around me. So, you know, they are still with us. They are watching us. And, you know, to anyone that is at that really dark depths, and, you know, you're laying there, you're at that stage of feeling like you can't get out of bed and you just want to cry all day and you don't even feel like you want to be here, they wouldn't want to see you like that. They'd be going, come on, mum. You know, I know from him and what he went through, and all the other children that I saw during his cancer journey of having treatment, because it was on and off 2.5 years, and they were all such brave souls, and now I've got this soul awareness and that as well. It's just clear to see that they were so brave throughout their journey, and they wouldn't want us. They'd be going, come on, mum, come on, dad, sort of thing. Get, you know, I'm here still, you know, and we've got the signs. You know, you see energetically they might connect with you. It might be flashing on of that. I remember once it was one of his toys going off. You know, that can be a sign if they're little like that. If butterflies were their favourite, you might suddenly see a butterfly. There's all manner of things like that you can see as well. But you just open your awareness to it, and then in whatever way's right for you, you'll feel them around you. They're still there. They're here.
Yeah. I didn't think I'd cry. Making me cry. Oh gosh.
Sorry.
Yeah, I am a crier. I am, and I just think, wow, you know, when you said that, and we end up, I don't know what that is. Like, I can see you holding your heart, and I do. It's just that I'm not sure why, but when you said, you know, they're here and they're watching us, that's the bit that got me, because I'm just like, you look what you've done. Look what they've done. They've constructed our souls and that contract, and it's like, you are in the right place at the right time, and there is healing to be done. And, you know, through the loss of our children, we can connect, and we can make a difference in the world. And yeah, that's what that was for me. I'm just like, wow, you know, what a blessing to be the mum of the boys that we've had. So thank you, kid. Wow, thank you so much. On that note, we will wrap up. And guys, do like this episode, share it out. I will repurpose it as a podcast. So if you're listening along, let us know how you find it. All right, then, take care. Bye.
Bye.